Well, hi, everybody. I'm Jim Shine with the NASC Origins Committee, and we're interviewing elders from the U.S. community. And today we have Andrea Largent joining us. Welcome, Andrea. So,
Oh, thank you. And thank you so much for giving me the opportunity. Thank you to NASC, to the board, to you, Jim. Um, really appreciate the opportunity to share something that may otherwise get a little lost as we keep having new and new and newer generations of facilitators. So thank you.
well, you're quite welcome. Yeah, no, uh, you go back a little bit farther than a lot of the U.S. facilitators. When did you first learn about constellations?
Yeah, I had a great I was really fortunate. I got to the work really young. I was only 24-ish years old, so that was 1988, 1989. Yeah, this was a friend that wanted to go there and try it out. It sounded a little bizarre to me, this family constellation thing. But I went along with her and I did a process, and my life very much changed for the better after that. So then I got really curious as to what the work is about, and that was Dr. Albrecht Marr, Albrecht Marr in 1988, I think, in Würzburg. Yeah, full 3 or 4 days. It was lovely, but it's definitely an experience when you go the first time, as we all know. Mhm. So it does go way back, yes.
Yeah, you were born and raised in Germany, so you got the advantage of getting it earlier. Really didn't come to the U.S. until like I guess the 1990s. But
That's right. 99, I came to the US.
yeah, and what drew you into the work personally into the work and made it effective?
Yeah, so letting go of my friend Doris, who definitely invited me to go, it was personal reasons. My first constellation had to do with my family of origin, like for most. And then I had some chronic health challenges that I wanted to really uh, get to a better place, and sure did. I mean, the chronic condition just completely disappeared and has been gone for all those 30 plus years. So um, it was really for my personal health. Mhm. Yeah.
Yeah. So was who were did you have any? I guess they didn't really have training and teachers back then.
No,
But who you said
no.
you said Albrecht Marr was like you. Any other prominent people that you learned a lot from? You feel like you.
Yeah. Yeah, and you're right, and maybe this is good to point out because now we have trainings and we have trainers, but in the early days, Bert Hellinger was quite clear that he didn't want to teach, that he didn't even want to be published, and so it was really the original three people were Gunther Weber and Albert Marr, who worked very closely with Bird from day one. It was really the three of them. And so those two began to scribe the the seminars that Bird would hold, and that's how the first books came together. Love's Hidden Symmetry is a script of a 3-day workshop with Bert Hellinger. And so we didn't have any formal training whatsoever for a good 10, 15 years in Germany. That really came much later. So the early 2000s, I'd say.
Yeah.
And so my first exposure was Albert Marr, who I followed and worked with, and so now we would say got trained by. And then of course Bert Hellinger himself. Um, and then also I studied some with Gunther Weber, um, not too much. And then in my later years, since I've been in the US, I can add the names of Stefan Hausner, which many know. Um, and so I've worked and studied with him for quite a few years. And also someone who's not as known, Ulrich Bold. Ulrich Bold taught me the capacity to work in different timelines, to work in karmic circumstances or past life circumstances. But also he opened me up to how to work with family curses or oath that would have been taken. So he has a whole different kind of tool set that goes a little bit outside of what originally was constellation. So that's Ulrich. Yeah, and then I have to give credit to my main mentor, which is Claudia Mengel, and she's German. And she was one that I was bringing then also actively to the United States once I moved here. Um, but she was a longtime mentor and taught me a lot about group dynamics, which I think is essential in this work to understand the nature of group and the nature of what we call the family conscience. How do we move in that? Yeah. And then I want to give credit to another teacher who's not coming out of our field, but he's influenced my work greatly, and that would be the West African elder Malidoma Some,
Yeah.
who I met, oh, the years, right? Maybe in 2014.
Mhm.
And he had just spent some time with Bert Hellinger. And
Mhm.
so he had become familiar with the process of family constellation. And he was sharing with us that we it would benefit the work to approach the representation of ancestors in a more honorable, more respectful way, which I found greatly intriguing. So I have been following his support or his advice ever since.
Okay,
Yeah.
thanks. So you
Mhm.
came over to the US in, you said 99,
Yeah.
and did you start facilitating right away or?
Oh, no, I had a few months of sort of finding my feet in a country I didn't speak the language in, which I know people find hard to believe. I'm pretty fluent at this point, but that wasn't the case in 1999. It was personal reasons that got me here, and it was a great hardship for me to find that when I looked around and looked for constellation communities, there were none. There were so few to be found. I found, in fact, three. And I was like, wow, this work is really hasn't really um, found a big place in the American culture, in the American way of providing alternative forms of healing or looking at
Mhm.
relatedness. And so I became part of the few people that would bring European teachers over so the work could grow in the United States. And I started that in 2000.
And you've been on the East Coast, right? Of the US?
Yes. It was the
Okay.
East Coast, and then it was also parts of Canada. So
Yeah.
we would go different places. And then the West Coast only to the degree that Jane Peterson, she would put together the first conference.
Yes.
So we attended those conferences. So in that aspect, I was on the West Coast, but not with my work, only as a presenter. Mhm.
And I know you started a small East Coast intensive like
Mhm.
2000, 2001, which is still
Yeah,
going.
yeah,
You had that
that's right.
pretty much every year, right?
Yes, I hold it every year if I can. I skipped this year. I haven't been able to put it together this year. But
Hmm.
pretty much every year. And it started out of the same sentiment that there were so few of us that Claudia and I really felt like it would be great to have a place where we could gather and we could support each other. We could support each other as facilitators in how do we bring how do we bring more people to the work, but also how do we get our work, right?
Hmm.
So it had personal work for us as facilitators as part of that. And that vision has stayed the same. But then, as you know better than I do, NASC was founded somewhere along the way and holds a great place of education and providing conferences in the US.
They're been
Lovely.
relatively recent, 2015 or 2016.
Yeah.
We're looking way back before 2005. But so you've trained students for quite a while, right? So.
Yeah, I offered my first training in the US in 2002.
Mhm.
And so I've had Oh, it would be hard for me to count. Not because they were countless, but because don't count very well. I train. I have a new group starting every 2 or 3 years, so
Hmm.
people have an idea. And so I train a body of students anywhere from 10 to 15, 16 people. And
Hmm.
then I really have like a 3 year, sometimes 4 year process because I go all the way from learning the foundation and the philosophy into into facilitation and phenomenological workings. But then they also need to go through an apprenticeship where they work and they're supervised and they get strengthened in their facilitatorship before they can then sort of move into their own. It's sort of a fluid process. It's not like a college degree and then you graduate, but
Hmm.
3 years seems to be a good time frame before people are ready. Mhm.
Well, you've had 20 years to kind of figure things out, so
Yeah.
that's so what are, well, both in teaching and in working, what are some of the like main points or gems of wisdom, or you might want to share with us that you found particularly helpful with your stuff?
Hmm. Yeah. Well, start with me personally. The the work is so complex, and within that there is so much to learn and so much to grow always. And so I've gotten to places in those 30 years of doing this work where I thought, oh, I'm understanding it. And then I had another workshop and I was thrown back into, wow, think about this all new. And
Mhm.
I appreciate this about the work. It also keeps me humble, which is not an easy task. I started as a nice, young, arrogant know-it-all.
Mhm.
I think I've grown in that department, but it's really for me the work is a way of life, more than it is a job I start doing. And it's fascinating the people you meet and the changes you are able to observe. I've seen people go from an inability to work back to being a full part of life and society and work. I've seen people who were very, very sick get very well in a short time. And I know this isn't about advertising some sort of miracle cure here, but the work has a potential that is astonishing to me. So I'm devoted to supporting it any way I can.
Yeah.
Is that the kind
Um,
of gems you're looking for?
yes, that's a great answer. Yeah,
Okay.
absolutely. How do you see constellations evolving in the future? I know you personally, you also do shamanic work and medium work, but overall, do you have any thoughts for the future? Just where you see, just from your 30 years of experience and how you've seen different things ebb and flow, where things might be going?
Yeah. Um, yeah. I don't know, but
Okay.
I have some hopes.
All
Um,
right.
I would like this work to always be open-hearted.
Mm,
I think that's been accomplished so far. And when I say open-hearted, I really mean that it gives lots of room for new developments and tentacles where things develop in new ways. Like nature constellation is a beautiful example. That
mhm,
wouldn't have been on my mind at all the first 10 years of knowing constellation work because it was so family oriented, wellness and health oriented, um, whether it's mental health or physical health. But here we have had other influences, and I think constellation is such an alive process, and it can only stay this alive if we make room for all the different ways. And yeah, so I hope that that's always part of what the constellation field offers. And I love exploring it all. I mean, for a few years, I would do astral constellations where I would use the constellation process to work inside the astrology. and bring healing about this way. It's not something that's sustained as a full-time practice for me, but it's wonderful to have the capacity to explore with this tool that we have. And so I hope this richness stays part of the field. Yeah.
Thanks.
With all the
Anything?
loveliness that comes with it, some edges too. Yeah.
Yeah. Anything else you want to add we haven't gone over?
Um, I don't know. Are there some, what do we have?
You don't have to. Just last chance. Just
Last chance.
no, it's not your last chance. That didn't come out right. But yeah, just anything else you want to add along the lines of the conversation. So.
Hmm. Yeah, I think there's something close to my heart. And this has to do with how I hold constellations in my own practice. And I want to just expand. So I came to constellation work at the same time that I was trained as a family therapist. So
Mm-hmm.
working with families or working in a therapeutic context has been the heart and soul of my work. And so after exploring many, many different ways of how to work, it's really where I've landed back and providing clinical work. And there's a healing structure that is part of the constellation process. And I really cherish the capacity of the work bringing so much healing for those that are living now, for those that still are to be born, and then also for those who stand behind us. And so if I were to try to say what am I standing for now, 2022, it would be this healing structure and how to really teach those who want to learn this work how to access this part of the work, because it's more than just setting up a few people,
Mm-hmm.
as you know. And so, yeah, maybe I'm using the opportunity to say this out loud. Thank you.
You're quite welcome. That's
Mhm.
what we were looking for. We honored your.
Yeah.
Thank you for being an elder all these years and
Mm.
what you've done to help us start constellations in the U.S. Thanks for taking the time to be with us today, Andrea.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Jim.